And something else that I thought of when you were talking is it's also about reframing the goal sometimes. So particularly with perfectionists, I find that you need to actually give them a different goal that isn't singing it perfectly. So even if the goal is, this could be the worst performance I've ever done, but the goal is to actually get up there and open my mouth. Then you can tick that off and you can say, okay, my goal is to be brave. Yeah, then I've at least done that and I've kind of succeeded at my goal no matter what comes out and no matter what mistakes that I've made. Or I often get perfectionists to actually get up and just be messy with their voices. So try not to actually control their voice and just to sing from the heart and not worry about anything that cracks or anything that sounds different to how they wanted it to be. And they find that very challenging, but because underneath perfectionism is usually people pleasing, they're so desperate to be messy and so desperate to tick that box or that goal that at least they have something to sort of channel their perfectionism to that is every single note perfect in that robotic kind of way.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I think that for most of us, when we're listening to singers, we're not necessarily listening for, are they technically perfect?
Yeah.
We're listening oh my goodness, that there's just that little hint of something in their voices, that little quality, whatever it was. There's something in the emotion that I'm hearing in the singer that's really just drawing me to that. They're not analyzing, well, how's her registration and how is her belting? I mean, certainly the technique contributes to the artistry. It enables the artistry. But we're not, as listeners, the things that we love about when I listen to music, I mean, I'm not sitting there nitpicking over whether or not that person's vowels are consistently defined or whatever they are, even though that might be a technical goal that I have. What I really want to hear is, does this person's voice move me? Am I convinced that this delivery is authentic, that their emotions are real, that they're really feeling the song? That's what I want to feel when I listen to music.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel that robotic, technically perfect, pristine, that's not the impression that I want. That doesn't do anything for me because it is too sterile. It's just too stiff. And so why is it that we had troubles doing that ourselves and just saying, I want to be the person who just emotes and who just shares that vulnerable side of me, instead of trying to be the person who is trying to control everything.
But often that is not taught or encouraged. So when you go to your lesson, or the way that I grew up with my teachers, is it was always about going back and perfecting the note or going back and working on the technique. There was never a moment in my lesson where my teacher said, okay, well now just sing it. Don't think about any of the technique and feel it. It was always like, well, can you sing this word like I said in the book? Like this word is heart in Italian, so can you sing it like heart? I'm like, well, that's not authentic either, because then you're trying to put a tone color on top of a word. So you're trying to manufacture an emotion rather than actually just feeling it and letting it be kind of messy with your emotions. So I'm always asking my students that, to do both, to do practice of both, get the technique and really focus in on whatever you're working on and whatever you're trying to tinker with. And then at the very end of your session, just let it out, let it kind of come from the heart and be messy with it, because also we're controlling so many elements of our technique that actually our body might already know, our muscle memory already knows how to do, and yet we're spending so much of our time and brain capacity going, oh, I've got to think about the inhale, I've got to think about the inhale, and your body's going, dude, I've got this. I know how to breathe now because you've spent the last 12 months telling me how to do it, but you have no idea what you already know and where the gaps in your knowledge are. And back to that idea of we're not nitpicking other singers. I always I kind of love proving my students wrong in the most positive of ways. And they'll say, oh, I hate how I did that. And then I'll say, yeah, but let's listen to your favorite singer do exactly the same thing. And you love that. You love the breathy quality of their voice in their lower register. And yet you're trying to eradicate that from yours, but you love it because you feel it. And when you watch somebody that's singing technically perfectly with no emotion, it's very meh.
Right. Well, so as a singing teacher, I always feel you make a really great point, because I always feel as though it's my responsibility to help them perfect their technique and And that's why they're coming to me, because they want to know how to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and be able to get their voices to cooperate consistently, reliably. But excuse me. So I was thinking, as you were talking about sort of just letting them be messy, letting them just kind of like, now just sing it from the heart, like don't think about the technique. So all my children are dancers, and when in our studio with the littler guys, they have like a free dance time at the end of their classes. For the last few minutes of dance, they skip the choreography, they skip the technique training. She just turns on music, just turns on a song, and the kids are just allowed to just dance around the room, just move their bodies however they feel free to do so. And that's something that I have difficulties, because I'm a control freak. I'm very OCD about things, and I know if I were in that situation, I'd be terrified, and I'd be like feeling so self-conscious, even though everybody around me is free dancing, even though everybody else is giving themselves permission to just dance from the heart. You know, it would be a terrifying prospect for me, for somebody who is such a control freak. And I was speaking with a student yesterday, and she likes to attend singing circles.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
So, and I was telling her about Davin Young's in Chicago. He does these on a monthly basis, and I've seen some videos of his free dancing, circle singing, and it's just amazing, because you don't go in with any kind of a plan. You don't have to worry about song lyrics. You don't have to worry about getting your melody right. There's no pressure there, and everybody just is there because they want to just use their voices in an expressive way, without the pressure of having to worry about technique and having to make sure that all their little, ducks are in a row. Technically speaking, that, it's not a performance. They're just doing it for like a free dance, basically. They're just in there, just raising their voices together in unison, exploring harmony, exploring just different sounds, and nobody's judging them. And I think we need more of that. And as a singing teacher, I probably also need to encourage more of that in my students. Just this, don't worry about it. Don't worry about all the technical stuff, because you have a lot of that in place already. That's what we've been working toward. And now's the time for you to just open yourself wide and just do it for the love of doing it, and let that emotion pour out, and let the, just feel that. And we need more of that. You're right. I think we need our students and singers in general just need to hear more of that. They need to hear more of, this isn't all about technique.
Yeah. Well, and also it's funny, because sometimes when they completely let it go, and I've got students that can only get to like 60% of letting go, because they are control freaks. They're like, I don't feel safe letting go any more than 60%, but you just keep pushing the boundaries with it too. It's just like anything else, you need to practice it. But some technical things are actually fixed. It's really fascinating to me. Like, a lot of tension comes from trying to control the sound. And so a lot of things actually fall into place a lot more when they let it go and they're messy with it, and they go, oh my gosh, like, what just happened? And the problem is that when they try to replicate that, they're then trying to replicate the sound and not the messiness. And so then it all falls apart. They go, see, I can't do it, told you, and get really sassy about it. But as a singing teacher, I think you're right. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I was pretty much taught technique like a ballet dancer is taught. And then it's like, okay, well, in a performance, I want to do hip hop, and I want to be all like loosey goosey with it and actually enjoy myself. And then I've had no experience practicing that. And so that was something that actually came and like sort of sunk into place, because I learned so much from my students. For me, in the last couple of years, I've learned to let go in performance, and it is terrifying. It's like riding a roller coaster, and you're like, I'm not even really sure if I'm belted in, but there is nothing better. Like, I was missing that piece, because when you go on stage and you're trying to control it, or you're trying to like push this emotion into the tone color, it's not the same as actually just letting your voice kind of pour out of you and having that real trust. And you can only build that trust by, I think, creating a space and giving them that permission. So, I say, go and sing something terribly. Just go and sing it. It can be the most awful thing that you've ever done, but it needs to be free. So that's the whole idea of messy. And I tell them to, imagine a 3-year-old kid finger painting, and do that with your voice. And then they're always amazed at, oh, well, then that was actually okay. And then that problem that was happening before actually didn't happen, and I didn't feel tense on that note. So yeah, I just think that it's important to create that safe space to do that and encourage people to do that outside of the lesson as well, because if you don't know how to do that, you're not willing to take the risk in a performance. And I don't think that you necessarily should. I think that you should practice it first and then realize, okay, well, if I'm doing this trust exercise, something is catching me in, and it's usually easier to do in easier songs. So going back to things that you feel pretty confident that you can sing, and then testing the waters of taking your hands off the wheel. And you start to get really aware of, oh yeah, I definitely at least put my fingers back on the wheel to try to direct that somewhere. And that really subtle sensation that isn't necessarily a constriction, but it's a controlling.
So, question, we're talking trust, right? So I think when you're in a lesson situation, there's that trust that you establish with your teacher, where you start to feel as though you can kind of start to let go slowly over time. You start to be able to sort of allow that messiness sometimes to come in, and you're okay with it. But then when you get yourself on stage and you're in front of a lot of people that you don't have that kind of relationship with, how do you cope with that? Like, how do you find that space where you feel like you can be vulnerable, and do you keep that trust within yourself, like you're in like a little bubble on stage? I mean, how would you, I don't know, manage that, I guess?
I think it goes back to that idea of setting different goals. So for me, at this point in time, I've done so many performances, and the ones that I'm most proud of are the ones where I'm able to keep my hands off the wheel for the longest. And it's interesting because you get different feedback. You get people coming up to you like, oh my gosh, like that was just so beautiful, rather than like, you've got a great voice, like, that was you really belted that note. It's really different when people are kind of so rocked emotionally by it, because you've taken your hands off the wheel and let it come out. So now when I perform, and I'm trying to say yes to as many different things as possible to keep seeing where that barrier of trust is, like how long can I go freewheeling it before I'm like, oh no, that was too terrifying. And there are points, like I had a gig a couple of months ago that I was doing just for a charity thing, and the first two songs, okay, great, I'm totally coasting with my hands off the wheel and being messy with it and just seeing what comes out. And then I did an acoustic version of Sia's Chandelier, which was in a lower key. Like, it didn't go like so crazy. But 2/3 of the way through that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, we're driving again. Because it was too hard to go, okay, well, something good's gonna come out.
Was there something that triggered that though? Was there something that all of a sudden made you realize that it kind of was like, like somebody's hypnotized, I guess you could say. Can't talk today.
Yeah.
Hypnotized, where it's like all of a sudden the fingers snap and then you realize where you are and what you're really doing.
But for me, and I think for a lot of singers, I think that high mix, like high chest dominant mix or like belting, triggers it, because all of a sudden there's one note that's slightly tense, and then you're like, oh gosh, I've really got to think about what I'm doing. It takes a lot of trust and confidence to use like a chest dominant mix or a belt. You've got to be all in, and you've got to take your hands off the wheel. And so I always, get students to do this kind of arm movement like people do on the stage, because that's kind of what you need, is this real openness and this ability to almost be fearless even though you're terrified. So that does tend to trigger me. And I also used to do a lot of belting and lost my voice years ago. So I think it's, people that have had polyps or nodules and things like that are also really, really scared to do things like that, which is fair. They should be learning to do it in a much more gentle way first. But that kind of hesitation actually also causes a lot of not only like emotional problems, but technical problems to arise as well. So I think everybody has, again, like comes back to those triggers of, oh my gosh, I'm going into my head voice. I've got to control it. So it's probably quite different for each singer, but it's snapping out of that moment also of presence and kind of being, okay, right, like, am I letting it go? Yeah, I'm letting it go. Can I just let my voice go through the melody and actually enjoy the space that I'm in. And almost it has to be more insular to start off with before you can share it with everybody else. As soon as I perform, I see it. Like, it's very, I'm like, what do I do with my arms and things? I'm so worried about how I'm coming across. But also, I can be triggered by somebody whispering in the audience and going, oh my gosh, that's got to be something negative about me. So there's so many different things that can take you out of it. But because my goal now is to be as messy and as authentically singing from the heart, that helps, because I'm like, you're not here to perform in the jazz hands type of way. You're here to connect. But it's taken me years to get to that point.
Yeah, that was definitely, it's always been an issue for me because I overthink and I overanalyze everything, and I'm just too much in my own head. And being someone who is an introvert by nature and grew up kind of shy, it's really hard for me to get on stage and not think about, what does it face mean? What are they talking about?
And it's just like nothing to do with you, which is the hilarious.
Which I know, it's just the funny thing. Because I think if people were to watch me at a concert, everybody else around me is like clapping and dancing, and I'm like, and I'm steering, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, but I'm just like taking it all in. Yeah. And I think if anybody were to look at me, they'd think that I was like completely unenthused. But really, I'm just like,
yeah, well, it's like resting bitch face as well. Some people can't help that, and then we're thinking that they absolutely hate our performance. And it's funny because often they're the people that come up and they're like, that was so great, and you're like, really? I thought that you thought that I was the worst singer.
I know. Yeah, I totally rocked out. What? You weren't moving. You weren't doing anything. It's like, I don't want to sing along. Like, I can sing along to your CD. Like, I don't want to sing along. I'm there to experience this whole visual and auditory thing. I'm just like, that's what I want right there. But, and I'm also just kind of reserved. I'm not seeing it now, but I'm a more reserved person. I don't feel comfortable I don't dance in front of people. I'm not somebody who just starts belting at a song in the grocery store as I'm walking down the aisles and stuff. And although I'm trying to train myself to do that. So I'm actually actively, I'll be singing along with my kids, and I'll sing something a little safe as I'm walking through pushing the grocery cart, because I'm trying to train myself out of that. I'm trying to give myself permission to just let go of that control.
That's awesome.
And to not worry about who's listening to me and what they're thinking about my voice. Because if somebody's singing around in a grocery store, they're not necessarily professional singers. They're not necessarily, anybody can sing in a grocery store. Yep. They're doing it because they love it. So it's a little bit safe because nobody's really going to be judging my voice like, oh, she's a singing teacher and therefore, I need to judge her by this standard over here. I'm just kind of singing a song with my daughter. That's what I'm doing. And it's good though, because it's kind of getting you slowly to, let go of the wheel just little bit by little bit. And for me, and it's like control freak as I am, I need to do things like that. I need to just say, to heck with it. Like, who cares who is listening and who cares what they're thinking? I'm doing it because it's in here and this is what I'm feeling in this moment. And I want to be responsive to that.
And a lot of people talk about this state of flow where everything just happens and you're kind of so present and so in the moment. It's a really different experience than, analyzing every single thing that you're doing. And it brings us back to that kind of childlike joy that we had. The whole reason that we were like, oh, I'm going to be a singer when I grow up. Like, I was going to be the next Mariah Carey when I grew up, when I was really, really little, because I felt that from her. And then I felt that when I was singing along to my little boombox, But then we start to become really serious about it, and we start to layer all of these stories on top of it. So I think you're right. Like, just even letting go in the grocery, or like, more people can do it in the car or in the shower. And so often students will say, why do I sound so good in the shower? And then I go to a proper serious practice session and I'm awful, and all the things that were working are not working anymore. I'm like, that's because you're trying so much harder. And it's a really challenging balance between honing your technique and doing that kind of deep practice and actually changing those habits, and then also practicing that complete letting go, because as I said, it's a muscle. It's a really tough thing to do, and it's a really tough thing for a teacher to teach you to do. We can't. We can just hold the space and actually give you that permission to do that.
Yeah, definitely creating a safe space for students is really important. I always tell new students as they walk in that I understand. I'm going to tell you now that, try not to be nervous, even though you are going to be nervous. I'm a stranger. I'm here to tell you everything that's wrong with your voice.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a fine.
Yeah, but that's how they're interpreting this, that I'm here to basically just, say, these are all the things that we need to work on. But I say that this is a safe space. And trust me, I've heard it all. I've heard the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've heard everything. Nothing surprises me. I am not going to make fun of you. I'm not going to, make you feel like this is a horrible thing, or that you're the only person in the world who has this particular issue with his or her voice. I'm not going to make you feel like that, because this is a safe space. All I really want to do is help you reach your singing goals. And so just trust me that I am here to help. I'm here to get you to that place where you can do the things with your voice that you want to do. And just even saying that sometimes, they're still going to be nervous.
Yeah.
They're still going to be nervous for probably several weeks, if not more.
I still think that they're actually the worst singer that you've ever heard. I always have people say, oh, but you haven't heard me yet. No matter what you say, you're like, I've heard everyone. I've heard people that think they sound like a dying cat, people that think they're tone deaf, and they go, yeah, but you haven't heard me. I'm the worst. I'm like, you're probably not.
Well, it's amazing because new singers, new students, when they come, they'll be singing through a scale, right? And especially guys, when their break is very, very noticeable, there's this look on their face that's very recognizable. This I am so utterly embarrassed in this moment. That I can't believe I just cracked in front of you. I just broke. Oh my goodness, I sounded like a prepubescent boy. What just happened there? And I can't believe you just heard that. And I'm like, it's cool. Now I know what's going on with your voice, and now I know how to help you fix that. It's really stop taking yourself so seriously. It's all right. I need to hear the behaviors of your voice. I need to hear what happens, what really happens with your voice, not what you feel like. I don't want to hear what you think I want to hear. I want to hear what the behaviors of your voice, so I can help you correct those things.
Yeah, I think
the problem trust.
Comes down to the fact that we do judge the voice by the sound. So I find it really challenging to get people outside of listening to the sound of their voice and more into what it feels like, because they're also very subtle sensations in the body a lot of the time. You move your soft palate millimeters, and it completely changes the way that it sounds and feels. But people are so used to judging good or bad from the way that it sounds, that they're not able to be in their bodies. And going back to what you were saying about being introverted, sometimes I actually think introverted singers are better in terms of being able to be inside themselves and acknowledging what it feels like, and actually being in their own little bubble of expression. Sometimes extroverts are much more out there and trying to get all of the feedback from other people. And so I think that some of the most beautiful, able to take their hands off the wheel and be in their own world singers can be introverts. So if there are any introverted singers out there that are worried that they can't do the performance thing, it's just going to be a different feeling for them.
That's a good point. I think that you have to find somewhere in between, I think, those two extremes, though, to really have an effective, impactful performance. Because if you are an introverted person, you are somebody who tends to be very inward focused. And that doesn't really work well in a performance, because then the performance becomes about you.
Yeah.
When the audience comes, they're wanting to feel somehow, even vicariously, a part of that performance. Yeah. They want to be invited in. And so as an introverted person, I have to find somehow, some way for me to be able to connect with them on some level, even though it's terrifying. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to be in your I'm never going to be that kind of person. I'm never going to be gregarious. I'm never going to be high energy, just, it's just never going to be me. And I accept that. But I also, at the same time, the performance isn't about me. It's about the audience. And I need to acknowledge that. And I need to realize that I have to give them something. I have to make them feel like there's some connection that makes it worth their while in coming.
Yeah. I think that helps with things that like anxiety around performance is it's not about you. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm like so panicked about me and how this is going to impact me. None of this is about you. Writing music is not about you. Like it feels like it is in the process, but that's why we share it. Is because we want to feel connected and we want people to be like, oh my gosh, I've had that exact same experience. And, you know, you look at Adele or like Taylor Swift, like they write about breakups and they write about relationships and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I've been there. Like I've been there so many times. And that's why you connect to that music. But you're right, and that it can't be 100% insular. It's probably more like having your little bubble and then inviting people into that. Maybe is a better way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you feel like you just need to get out there for this?
I feel like we've covered a lot of great stuff. Yeah, no, I think it's just repeating on what we've said, like not taking it too seriously. Also in the realms of that, like if you are not experiencing joy as a singer anymore, it's kind of okay to take a break. We push through that a lot and we're like, oh, but I have to be practicing every day and I have to do this because otherwise I'm not going to get to XYZ. And sometimes a bit of distance means that you miss it. So, yeah. And also the other thing that's kind of in line with that is when I used to do gigs and I used to perform at, you know, dodgy pubs and I'd be packing up and getting home at 2 a.m. I really took that for granted. I used to get really crabby about it. And I thought, oh, you know, there's not even the audience that's out there. Like no one's really hearing me and they're all playing their pokey machines and I'm barely getting paid for this. And there was just so many negative gripes about it. This is a gift that we have. Like we really need to stay grateful for this opportunity and grateful that we get to do this no matter what the situation is. And I think it's really easy to get into this mode of nitpicking different things, but there are so many people that would kill to be able to sing, and even though they can and they could definitely learn it, don't take that step. And so yeah, just acknowledging that your voice is a gift, and that also ties into looking after it. I think we take it for granted a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, I will let you go be a tourist.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the chat. I love this. This was great.
Yeah, it's always amazing talking to you, and I hope that other people are kind of nodding along in different parts and can get something out of it too.
And if the viewers haven't already purchased it. Moderately Tortured Artist. It's a good little read. Like I said, it reads very blog-like. It's very casual. It's not...
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make it accessible. Like it's also what we're talking about can feel very heavy and very difficult and painful to kind of look at. So I wanted to make sure it was quite lighthearted, even though it tackles relatively serious topics. So yeah, that you can get that on my website, inspiredtosing.com, or it has its own website, and you can actually get little samples of it as like a free taster on there as well, which is moderatelytorturedartist.com, which I know is a long title, but it seems to work for what we're talking about.
Well, I picked it up here in the US from Amazon. So
yeah, you can get it there. It's got my own stories and stories from friends of mine that are musicians. So it's not just for singers, it's about music, but and students of mine. So that you can go, okay, yeah, I'm not completely nuts. Everyone goes through this.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, sometimes we do feel so isolated, but it's good. It's good to read this because it confirms everything. It's like, oh, yeah, you know, other people have experienced those things too. It's not just me. Yeah. I'm not somehow unique in that respect.
You're just not alone. Yeah, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah. You put a lot of wipes in there? Oh, dear.
You got a crisis.
I have to go find the plunger. That's my cue. I gotta go.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so great to see you as always, Karyn. I hope you have a
you too. Okay. Take care.